Okay, we're going to tie a fly called a Bivisible. This is an old pattern, it's been around for a long time. It fell from favor, I think, mostly because it's hard to put these in a fly box and not destroy the hackles on them. Even today's fly boxes with the slits that you slide the hook into push the barbules in the back of the hook out of alignment, and so people need a compartment to store these in, and most boxes aren't made that way anymore. But if you've got the space and the way to keep these and not crush the hackles, this is a really good fly. Okay, so I've got a brown hackle here sized for this size 14 hook, and you can see the webbing and where the webbing ends and the good dry fly quality barbules are. And all of the fluff and extra stuff down to the bottom here I'm going to trim away, but I'm going to leave this stem long so that I can use it to help mount the hackle. So having cleaned all of that away, I'm going to take a few fibers off here so that I don't have to worry so much about misaligned fibers when I start wrapping. And then I'm going to pass this extended length quill in underneath my thread, and then just use the length of the quill to lift this whole feather up in, and it allows me to make sure that I've got the right amount of bare quill sticking out from underneath my thread wraps so that I can get this thing to wrap and not cause misalignment back there when I do wrap my hackle. I'm going to wrap up forward here and tie a whip finish knot and use my bobbin cradle to suspend my bobbin while I'm doing my wrapping. You could just throw a half hitch or something in here. You can actually usually just lay it out and have it hang over the bobbin cradle and not make the knot at all, or any knot, but I like to throw a whip finish knot in every now and then in a lot of my flies. So I'm kind of bending this quill down a little, get my hackle pliers, grab hold of that, and use the rotary feature of the vise to start wrapping. And you can see the bare quill laying down here, and when these quills start wrapping they stick straight out, but I wrapped it backwards by mistake a little bit here. Let's see if I can cheat my way forward. I can. I probably should have just unwrapped that and then started wrapping over, but it wrapped over itself nicely, so I'm all the way up to where I cut my quill off. I'll take this, check to make sure it's all right, take this thread off the bobbin cradle and tie that down. Got one or two quill segments back there that are fibers that are sticking towards the front, but it's fine. Just so you can see in this insert here, if you do make a mistake wrapping, it's because of the rotary feature, it's pretty easy to unwrap and then wrap back up and correct your misaligned fibers. So having tied that quill off, let me cut that off and get a white feather to do the bivisible part of this so that it's always visible to you, the fisherman. It's one of the great features of this fly. I prepped the white quill the same way. Cut the stem long, pass it in underneath my hanging thread. And I normally would tie it in right there, but instead of tying in at that point, what I'm going to do is wrap back into my brown hackle. And then pass that quill under. And lift it up into place. And when I start my hackle wraps now, there won't be any gap or boundary between my white and my brown hackle. The white will just make its first wrap or two in the brown and then come out and transition to the front and be all white. So let me show you that setting one more time. You just lift the quill up, you slide it in underneath, lift it up, drop it down. Make sure you've got the right amount of bear quill sticking out. Tie this in now. When this starts wrapping, I realize that I have set this backwards. I would have preferred to have the concave side facing away from me so that when I started wrapping, the barbules stuck to the back of the hook. But I prepped the feather such that the concave side is, I mounted it facing me, and I prepped the feather by taking those extra barbules off to start a clean wrap. I took them from the side of the feather that requires me to mount it with that concave side toward me, and it doesn't really matter that much with today's good genetic hackle, because the barbules pretty much stick straight out when you wrap now instead of leaning towards that concave side. But as I grab this and start wrapping, you'll see what I mean about the concave side. See, I got the bare part of the quill coming around, but the concave side is to the front, and when these barbules lean, they're going to lean a little towards the eye of the hook. I made wide wraps coming through that brown, by the way, and now I'm using closer wraps. And because the barbules are leaning towards the eye of the hook, I really can't get the one or two more wraps that I would have been able to get if the barbules were leaning towards the bend of the hook. So I should have mounted that feather the other way. But I can certainly still fish this fly, and it'll fish well. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. Trim those fibers right there that were sticking out towards the eye. And again, this is a penalty you pay for having mounted that feather so the concave ended up wrapping towards the eye. I wouldn't have these fibers to deal with if I had mounted that feather the other way. And so I'd be able to make a much smaller head, of course, on this fly. But again, like I said, it will fish well, and you'll see the problem. You do see now the problem of mounting it so that the concave side is towards the eye. But there you have it. There's a Bivisible tied using rotary fly tying techniques.